Good morning, everybody. I will start by saying everyone's talking about how sunny it can be. Gemma and Anne-Marie will know I've just come back from Spain and it has been very warm. And when I woke up this morning, my weather told me it was 28 degrees. It definitely wasn't 28 degrees. I was quite surprised it was 18 degrees. Yes, it's very, very nice to be back. And I've got my heating on full blast. Great to have you all here today. Uh, so we'll start off by jumping into a few questions. So as Gemma's just introduced, so my name's Gary Parsons. I am a leadership mentor. I work with lots of different business owners, lots of different people in different leadership roles. I'll tell you a little bit more about me shortly, though, and a little bit more about me, should I say. So, absolutely, this is about balancing health and business. Something that I think all of us can struggle with from time to time for many different reasons. Specifically within the Lilac Review, but particularly in the Lilac Review, should I say, we are talking about people with disabilities, or whether you identify with that label, whether you might have a physical disability, you might be neurodivergent, you might experience different challenges with mental health, or something that's less visible. I wanted to ask you a question. So, what are some of the challenges that you are experiencing in business? If you could use the chat feature and just help me out at the start, just so when I'm talking, I can make sure that I can tailor this a little bit more for you. I appreciate there's probably going to be some people that are watching a recording, but I just wanted to see what are some of the challenges that you have. You might, for example, like I say, have a physical disability. I've got a really good friend. She experiences challenges with wheelchair access. I know that's quite a common one. It shouldn't be. A lot more businesses are getting a lot more experience, but particularly when I'm going into businesses and when she's going into businesses, I know that can be a challenge just to get through the door of those businesses. So, what are some of the challenges that you might experience? So some people are saying on here, fatigue is the biggest challenge. I can relate to that. I think that's a huge challenge, and I think one of the things that we see with fatigue is that we can't always predict when that fatigue will kick in. So that's quite difficult to be able to manage as well. Any others that are on there? So uh, networking is challenging with autism. So a a key business skill was, sorry, I'm just reading this as well. So I also have dyslexia, so forgive me for a moment. A key business skill, but not very friendly for me. Yeah, so networking, it feels like an essential part of what we do. Physical disability, thank you, Vicky. Yeah, wheelchair access, absolutely. We've just mentioned that. Physical and mental fatigue, so fluctuating symptoms. So lots of, wow, you're really helping me out here. There's loads of different areas. And it's quite hard to think of sometimes for certain people, isn't it? To sit there and think of where are my challenges, just general struggles from one day to the next. It can be on one side it can be very predictable, on the other side it can be very unpredictable, and it does fluctuate and can be quite challenging for us. So you mentioned some there. So some of the things that I've considered ahead of this presentation, ahead of this talk, is like you said, the physical disabilities. So whether you might be in a wheelchair, you might have a chronic condition like ME or MS, ultimately will affect your mobility. You might be neurodivergent, so that might be as we know, for people that aren't neurodivergent, that might be a processing or communication challenge that we might have. We mentioned, somebody said already about networking might be a challenge there. Mental health, so somebody with depression, PTSD, bipolar. I know from my own experience, and I'll go more into detail today, that that can be a real challenge from one day to the next, from the experiences that we might have in business that can happen to us. And something that's more less visible is the best way to describe it. So somebody with diabetes, somebody that might have a heart condition, or somebody with epilepsy. There are lots of different areas, and forgive me if I've not mentioned a condition that you experience or the label of disability, which I struggle with from time to time personally. I'm going to say that from the very start. I really struggle with that label. But if that's something that you can identify with and you are navigating the world of business, then absolutely I'm going to try and cover it as much as I possibly can to today. And I think it's really honest of me, and hopefully you'll take this in the best sense, is that I want to make sure that I'm covering as much as possible, but I am only going to speak from my own experience. So please give as much input as you can do. And Gemma will have the lovely task at the end to be able to take some of your questions and answers, and we'll do our very best within this talk for you. But ultimately, what I will say is that we are all united and we all need support. I think that's the best way to describe it. We all need to balance our health on a day-to-day basis, and that can, like I've just said, it can be different for each person. Energy levels, recovery cycles, I think is a big part. Access to finance, I know I've seen that be a big part of the Lilac review so far. Isolation can be quite a big challenge, and that adaptability and that resilience, which I've got to say can sometimes be a strength of ours when we are facing challenges every day. Whilst it can be quite difficult, I certainly think we can all relate to that. We see it as a big strength, and certainly we can go through that. So let me just talk, if I may, just talk a little bit about myself. And it's always a fun bit, isn't it, talking a little about ourselves. So from my point of view, I just wanted to explain my journey to you a little bit more, just so you can have an understanding of where I come from, when my challenges have come in. I ultimately, when I was growing up, I was very entrepreneurial. From a very young age, as being a teenager, I was building computers. I was a very much a geek. I was going to computer fairs and buying parts of computers. I was selling them to my neighbors. I was selling them to my teachers. A very quick story. I remember I bought lots of different parts for a computer, and I went to go to visit, go to school one day, and my mum dropped me off in her car, a little Talbot Sunbeam, if anybody remembers the old classic cars. And she dropped me off at the end of the road, and I toddled into school with this very big computer, and I sold my very first computer to my teacher for, I think it was around about £250. So I have been very entrepreneurial from a very young age and very into business. I, from a very young age, wanted to always set up my own company. I set up GP Computers at a very young age, and I was always had very big dreams of taking over the world. And this, I always use this picture because this is a picture of me and my friends at school. And you can see very quickly, I'll let you guess which. No, in fact, I'll point it out to you. So I'm at the back there on the right hand side, a very classic 90s haircut. And I was very much getting involved in lots of projects at school. And actually, this picture was part of building computers, but we also were designing the school website, which I'm not going to give my age away too much, but I always talk about pre-Google, and I was designing websites before Google even started. So that'll give you a timeline of where I was at. But like I say, I was very entrepreneurial, wanted to take over the world, had very, very big dreams. Sadly, though, when I was 18, and I haven't got any pictures to show you, when I was 18, I woke up one day with half of my face was paralyzed. I was diagnosed with something called Bell's palsy. Bell's palsy is a form of facial paralysis, and you'll see I've still got limited function on the right hand side of my face. From my point of view, it very much felt like all my dreams had come to an end. It felt like my life was over. It felt like everything that I'd ever dreamt to be able to do, those dreams of building computers, and I didn't even talk about designing business cards and presentations and brochures for friends and family. It genuinely felt though like my life was over. And very sadly, I went into myself, and for 5 years, I dealt with the trauma every day of looking into the mirror, and I was very, very much dealing with that on a day-to-day basis, with the trauma of that every day. After 5 years, though, I finally moved forward, and I did move into a very positive side of my life. And I did all of those things that we probably shouldn't say. Well, we absolutely shouldn't say in 2025. And I used all of those negative phrases like man up, and absolutely shouldn't be using that now. I used a phrase of getting a grip, like, come on, Gary, get a grip and just move on. And I moved forward. I moved forward in a way that I wanted to go out to the world and start doing my own thing and just getting over this trauma that I was living with every single day. And 5 years in, I started doing lots of different businessy things. And in 2009, I started my own business. Now, there's going to be some really clever people on this call. I know that straight away. 2009 was the end of, well, the tail end of the recession. So the craziest and best thing that I ever did was set a business up in 2009. And I say that again, the craziest and best thing that I ever did. And in 2009, when you've gone through all the trauma that I'd gone through, I genuinely felt like that was the best thing that I could possibly do, is to go and set a business up. I moved 100 miles away from home. I'm a only child. My mum is a single parent. I moved 100 miles away from her, 2 hours up the motorway over here in, I'm going to call it sunny Derbyshire today because it is quite sunny. And I moved away from home. I tried to forget about everything that I'd been dealing with, and I set a business up. I plowed all of my energy and all of my identity into my business. And in 2009, like I say, the craziest and best thing that I ever did, I started a business. I started initially in recruitment, and then I grew that business into a full 360-degree agency. We were recruiting staff for companies. Yes, again, the craziest thing I could do in 2009, when companies were shedding staff left, right, and center. I was, we brought out a payroll business. We were doing HR for companies, and eventually we acquired a company, and we were doing lots of development and lots of training and development for businesses. And yeah, we were successful. In 2017, I was stood on stage and I was accepting awards. We were doing really, really well. And in 2017, we were growing the business by 250% year on year. So some really amazing growth, really incredible growth. But what I didn't talk about in 2017 was when I was growing, when we were growing as a business. I've talked to you about all the trauma and the story that I'd gone through in my life at that point already. I hadn't dealt with my own mental health and my own trauma, and I just was pushing forward. And hopefully, you can see where the theme comes into now in terms of balancing business. Because in 2017, I wasn't balancing the business whatsoever. I was fully engrossed and engaged into the business. And I was absolutely focused on growing the business, and I wasn't looking after myself. Can I just have a show of hands whether you want to click on the reactions and the feature? If you click on the little arrow next to raise, I think it's raise hand. I'm trying to remember myself where it is on here. If you want to jump on there and just show me for a moment, I'd really, really value it. Or pop it into the comment. Can anybody relate to just throwing yourself into business and just doing it? And some of you, I know I've really got a really, really good friend. We talk about it, we laugh about it, but it's really not a joke. where we sometimes don't we just use that tactic of avoidance. We just throw ourselves where we really just want to just keep pushing forward and we just forget about ourselves. Is that relatable? So yeah, Megan, 100%. Thank you, Gemma. Yeah, it's next to the chat button. I was trying to remember where it was. It moves down every time when I do it. Um, so yeah, after redundancy, HMRC, I had a really incredible client that I'm working with. She just threw herself into a project for a year. You know, when you're burnt out already from redundancy and you're going through all the trauma of business and you just throw yourself into something else. Had a good friend last year said to me, "You've just gone through a really stressful time. Why are you throwing yourself into into more stress?" But it's just our natural default, isn't it? Just replace stress with more stress. Um, Amanda and Tim have raised their hands. Oh, absolutely. I'm not going to pull you in for chatting at this stage if that's okay, but absolutely, we'll use that feature to raise our hands whether we're physically doing it or not. Um, I told that they couldn't find anything wrong with me. I have trauma, but because of that, because of pushing through multiple system disease, by the way, ADHD, yeah, this can be the thing. We can just keep throwing lots of different things in, and we can just keep pushing forward too much. So, thank you, Rachel. It's something that we do too often. So, yeah, from my point of view, thank you for your input there. It's always good to just hear people can relate to that. I was one of those people, though. I was one of those people that I genuinely, in 2017, realized that I needed to stop. I was diagnosed with severe depression in 2017. When you see me on that picture on the right hand side, I was stood on that stage. By the way, I don't know if people are going to award ceremonies these days, but when you go to award ceremonies, normally you go up on stage, shake the hand of the person on stage if you're able, and you accept the award, and then you go off stage, and that's what you do. In 2017, when I was diagnosed with severe depression, and I was taking antidepressants and diagnosed with all sorts of different things, and working with a cognitive behavioral therapist. I was stood on stage and they said, "Gary, you need to give a speech." Now, just to give you context here, I don't watch TV without crying these days. I can't watch Holby City without being in tears. I'm rubbish at watching them. My Just to give you some context, my co-directors were stood behind me in tears and they asked me to go and speak on stage. I did really well. I didn't cry. I held it all in and I gave this really passionate speech about growing a business. And I walked off that stage that day absolutely full of amazing endorphins and really felt amazing of how well we'd done with the business. But the next day, I sat down with my co-director and said, "I'd like to go and tell the world about how amazing we are. But I also want to talk about how fast we're growing and the success that we're doing and put it in the context of my own mental health struggles." Because at that point, I absolutely had found this superhero cape. I wanted to talk about that. But sadly, and still now I'm slightly reluctant to have agreed with him, but it felt like the best thing to do at that point was to hold back and not talk about my mental health challenges, what I'd gone through, because we felt like that was going to stop us growing our business. It felt like it was going to stop people investing in our business. And it felt very much like we were going to scare people away from not from that stigma ultimately that comes with mental health and business. And sadly and reluctantly, I agreed with him and I stepped back and decided not to go and tell the world in 2017 about the things that I'm now talking to you about today. But what I did do is that I became more selfish. And I know there's going to be some people here and I can almost feel you through the webcam. There's going to be some people hearing that word and going, "Wow, that's a really hard word to hear." and I'll not bore you with the detail of it, but I looked all the way back at the etymology, and forgive me, Anne Marie, for using etymology as a word, uh, using going all the way back to 1640 when this word was there and all the stories behind it. And selfish has always been a negative word, hasn't it? We've always used negatively, like, oh, Gary, you're being so selfish. Gemma, you're really selfish. I had a friend only a few weeks ago, I wasn't well, and I had to cancel to go to a meeting. People will relate to that. Can we relate to that? And somebody said to me in a WhatsApp chat, Gary, just be selfish then and stay where you are. It feels quite harsh, doesn't it, to hear that? But luckily, in that group, people that heard that word and they know that I absolutely own it, and I have it on a t-shirt, and I will show you for people that can't see. So I've got a yellow t-shirt on, and the t-shirt I've got the in capital letters in black writing. It says the word selfish, and I wear this t-shirt when I go out networking, when I stand on stage now, because I really want to own the word selfish in a good way. Why is it, I ask you, why is it that we use the word selfish in a negative way all the time? Well, in 2025, it feels like we can certainly use that word in a positive way. If you could do me a favor, and I'll keep reading these as I'm going through it, as a jumping through, but feel free to pop into the chat. What word comes to mind when you heard the word selfish? When you saw that appear on the screen for the first time? Was it a positive word? Was it a you need to look after your well-being? Was it that negative that you are a nasty person? Are you egotistical? Do you only look after you and nobody else? I'll give you an example actually, how I see selfish. When I got the plane to the lovely world of Spain, I'm sorry, I keep rubbing it in, but it was very warm. When I got back on the plane yesterday, on Tuesday, one of the announcements that they make when they're talking you through the emergency procedure is to make sure that you put your mask on before anybody else. And when you've got your mask on, you can then help the person next to you that depends on you. What they don't say is look after everybody else, and when they're sorted, then you can look after you, because they're not always able to support you. Isn't that interesting that we don't do that in life? But we tend to do that on a plane in an emergency. In fact, we are told to do that. Whether we do it instinctively is something different. So in 2017, after everything that I'd gone through, I started to be more selfish. I started to put myself first. And I've developed this into something that I now call selfish leadership. Selfish leadership is all, sorry, I'm jumped ahead there. Selfish leadership is all about prioritizing your health, not as an option, but as something that is strategic. Strategic. Your business needs to work for you, not the other way around. Whether you are in an employed leadership role or whether you own your own business, you need to make sure that you are looking after yourself first, particularly if you have a chronic condition or a disability that means that you need to put your health first, even more than anybody else. Then absolutely you need to be more selfish. And you shouldn't be afraid of using that terminology. I don't, clearly. So today what I want to talk to you about, and I'll give you some practical tips as we're going through, and I'm very aware that we've only got really 15, 20 minutes at most now. But I'm going to talk you through some of the tips and the framework that I've developed, which is all about yourself. So the letters here being SELF and the self framework. So it's very much like I've said, it's about prioritizing your health and well-being. And just to finish that story, by the way, I now work with business owners to be able to do this. I've left that business that I'd grown for 16 years, it will be this year. I'd left in February this year, and now I work shouting very much about the need to be more selfish. And this is what I do full time. So Being selfish, like I said, is more strategic. So we'll start with the S, which is all about setting boundaries. So many disabled entrepreneurs will probably be used to pushing past their limits. And it's something that we get used to, something that is not a good thing to be doing, but something that we get used to doing. We almost feel like we sometimes have to prove ourselves more than other people, or it might be because clients, customers, whoever we're working with will have expectations of a neurotypical or a typical person or typical employee. And we absolutely need to acknowledge that we shouldn't be pushing past our boundaries all the time because we know how that will affect us. It's something that we know. It's something that's obvious here, isn't it? Um, where it comes in for people that I see that I work with and for myself, so chronic illnesses, certainly there's a need to protect, and some of you have said it already, it's like those energy windows and making sure that where you've got those energy, where you've got that energy, that we can constantly maintain that energy. It might be that and certainly I see this through ADHD that I also have, is that we might over commit ourselves impulsively. Those shiny objects, those shiny projects that we want to work on, I'm sure you will relate, where we want to get involved in them and we put our hand up first, but we really shouldn't be the first to jump at that because we need to be protecting our boundaries more, or just being more conscious of our boundaries. Something I've talked about is time and energy. So those that we see that as an accessibility barrier that we need to work on as well. But ultimately, setting boundaries is about protecting your time, your energy, your focus, and treating them as finite resources and making sure that you aren't constantly pushing those boundaries like I've talked about already. And it's about prioritizing what really matters. So not every opportunity deserves a yes. And just focusing on that priority list and just taking some things off that list that you might automatically put on there. It's about pausing. So it's also about pausing before you put your hand up, before you agree to get involved in a project, and giving yourself space just to step back for a moment and think about the real cost that is involved in doing that. We can be so quick, can't we, to jump and get involved in a process. But it's okay to just step back and just say, maybe on this occasion, I will not do that. So, some quick practical strategies for you. So, think about creating some hard stop times. So, if you're working with clients on a day-to-day basis, you might say, as I do, in some scenarios, you might say no client calls after 3 o'clock, for example. And you might only do your client phone calls between 10 and 3 o'clock. On low energy days, you might limit the amount of calls you will have. You might use technology. So think about using some autoresponders. Great to be able to put an auto reply on to say, I am busy working with clients this week, so please bear with me. I will come back to you as soon as possible. Use a shared calendar with people so they can see what time you've got available. Building some flexibility into contracts as well. So instead of saying, I will turn around in 24 hours, put your standard turnaround time as 5 days, for example. And great if you can do it in 24 hours, brilliant. But 5 days is absolutely fine. And that might be more than enough for a particular client. Just going to give you a very quick one from my own personal experience here. So, my amazing assistant, Hannah, one of the things that she does with me is she looks out for amber or red flags for me. So, some of those boundaries that we might see and saying, how do I describe this? Saying no in the moment can feel quite hard. If you are really unwell or you're really low on energy, something that you can't do and trying to maintain those barriers can be quite difficult. And one of the things that Hannah does for me is that she'll reach out and say, I know you've been unwell this week. I know that you've got a lot on. Shall I cancel those meetings on Friday? Or I might say to her, I'm feeling really unwell. And she'll say, Gary, if you'll let me, and she'll always give me permission, let me give permission. She'll always say to me, Gary, you've got two meetings this afternoon. Would you like me to cancel them? Because it's absolutely fine and I know they'll be okay. And she takes that guilt away for me because I think that can be the hardest part of setting boundaries for us is dealing with that guilt. So having somebody with you might have that support for access to work, where I do, having a PA, a virtual assistant supporting you, and getting somebody externally to be able to spot those amber and red flags is something that's helped me dramatically. So moving on to the next part is all about elevating well-being. So many entrepreneurs will rely on forced rest. So one of the things that we see, and I've had this myself only in the last couple of months, is that we're really good at taking that time out when we really need to take that time out. And we say, I'll go and book a holiday. I'm saying that not all of you will be good at doing that, but we're really bad at reactively finding that rest where we need to, where we might have those flare ups or those crashes. Um, Instead, we need to think about that intentional recovery time. So just planning that in if we can do. Um, so tips for you on this. So recovery from stress or overwork before your body forces you, that absolutely something that we need to be thinking about recovering, finding those recovery windows. Refueling, so physically or mentally refueling, trying to find those habits to sustain that energy, that fuel. Reconnecting with yourself, with others. Something that we forget all the time is that, yes, we might find time to recover and refuel to be able to go out and support the clients that we're working with. But when we take it away from work, it's also very important to us to spend time with family or close friends to be able to get that energy from those people and have that sense of community. And again, it's all about balance. That word that I use all the time is balance. So reconnecting with you or other people is really, really important. So some of those strategies there for you. I'm very aware that I'm giving you lots of information today. I know Gemma, and at the end of this, by the way, what I will do is I will send you through some um, slides. So, sorry, I'll say that again. There's a feedback form at the end of this. I'll give you the opportunity to go on there, fill your details in, and I will send you through these slides at the end of this as well. But I know Gemma will do that, so don't worry about it. Is this making sense? So I'm just going to quickly see. So, Vicky, you said virtual assistants are great. You are one. There we go. We're preaching to the converted, I think is the phrase. So brilliant. Absolutely. I know that it's the best thing that I did is to go out and find a virtual assistant. Hannah is amazing. She's changed my life dramatically. And I know there's lots of great people out there. Do other people have virtual assistants? That's a good question to ask you. Do people see that? Um, Securing a PA through access to work is definitely a challenge. I can relate to that. And we need to think about the of ability to pay and benefit for VA. So yeah, I know it's a huge challenge of access to work, and I feel like I'm swearing by even using that phrase, and we won't get too involved in it. But yeah, absolutely. Gary, are there any access to work allowances to provide a VA? So yes, I believe so. At this moment in time, I know a lot of my clients will use a virtual assistant, or as access to work, they will see them as a support worker. Um, all I will say is it is access to work. There is a huge challenge around getting support for access to work. So please don't take my word for it. Have a chat with their team and see whether that is accessible. I know, for example, someone like Anne Marie, we're doing BSL. and working with an interpreter feels like standard. But certainly somebody, for example, that is neurodiverse and neurodivergent with autism or ADHD would really benefit from somebody like a virtual assistant as well. So absolutely, it's a good way of dealing with that. Um, Moving on, because I'm aware of time. So the third area is leading with intention. So when our health particularly is unpredictable, it's really easy to fall into that reactive leadership, that team, that reactive state. So we might fall into that firefighting or that last minute pivots or constantly feel like we're catching up. I know that particularly can happen when somebody that experiences, and if you have ADHD or you have autism on the call today, that can be a real challenge, maybe with that decision fatigue or that overwhelm from constantly moving different parts. So, what I would ask you, there's probably three main things that you can do. So, the first one is to focus. So, focus on those purposeful actions that can move that needle, not the noise. So, what can you do to just change that and just reduce the noise, reduce the firefighting, and just make things a little bit easier? And it's just, and I'm sure we can all see it when we step back, is just really taking that moment to step back and say, what can I do to make a difference here? It's all about aligning. So I use this quite a lot with clients. So aligning those daily choices. So where are we wanting to do the best work that we do? Where do we enjoy doing work? What aligns with your values and what aligns with your vision? We don't want to be doing work that drains us, that we don't like, that conflicts with our values, with the clients that I've had clients come to me before where they don't believe in well-being and they're really stressed and they just want you to go and tick a box. That doesn't align with my values, and it is really hard work that I then have to do. So I don't tend to work with those clients. And I know it's hard to say no to those clients, but think about the impact it has on your own well-being and try to be more intentional with the clients that you work with and the work that you take on board, because it can be really draining when we work with those, can't it? Um, and decisions, so it says decide on here, but decisions, decide with clarity. And I think going back to what I said earlier, it's about pausing before committing, before getting involved and jumping at that chance. Just decide and make those decisions with clear intention. So that might be a business model that fits better for you, for the condition that you experience, to the disability that you have, rather than jumping at what you think is normal for everybody else. It's about finding a business model that fits for you. So that might be that you have work that is on retainers. So you have that work that is constantly there. It's great, isn't it, when we have retainers where we don't have to keep selling every month. A retainer model might work better for you, where, and just for clarity, that might be a client that pays £500 every month and you give them 3 hours of your time. If that model works better for you and your condition, then definitely do that more so than going to chase those sales time and time again. And that reduces firefighting and chasing that sale all the time. A subscription model or a retainer model might be better for you. I think it's also about finding 1 or 2 days in that week to switch off, to make sure that you are, as much as working on client calls, you are balancing that. Maybe it might be 2 days working with companies, with clients, and it might be 2 days where you have a more varied schedule, where you can switch off, where the demand isn't there for you. Because, of course, when I know this from training and delivering work, if I'm doing 3 days worth of delivery, I need 2 days to switch off. And one of the things I do is I don't work on a Wednesday, and that helps me. That's my downtime. That's my way of going out, and I go in. switch off, and I have a horse and I go horse riding, and that's my way of just connecting with nature and just switching off on a Wednesday. Um, One of the notes I've just got here in front of me to remind me is aligning those daily actions to those values. So it's asking yourself, is this the business that I want to be building? Because again, it's going back to going, is this really aligning with my values? Is the business the one that I want to? And just reflecting more intentionally. And then fostering that growth, because growth feels like a buzzword, doesn't it? Why are we chasing growth targets? Well, normally we chase growth targets because our best friend or that person that we've seen on TikTok or somewhere is growing a huge business and they are turning over millions and millions of pounds. But do you really need to be chasing that target? Do you need to be building a business that's got 5, 10, 15, 100 people? Is it okay to just be self-employed? Yeah, it is. If that business model works better for you, then that is okay. But we don't always have to chase growth. So, growth is about growing a business, but it's also about your own development. Because remember, we need to work on the business, but we need to work on ourselves as well. And that might be working on the skills, but it also might be working on getting better at managing our well-being and making sure that we get better at that balance. It is about building and empowering yourself to go and do things. So I use the word empower here in terms of that support network. We've talked about virtual assistants. It might be about getting a bookkeeper to help you with finance for 1 hour. Is that, that from a cost point of view to the benefit, that might be easier for you to do. So it's making those intentional decisions, but about empowering you those decisions, should I say. Finding those communities as well can help empower you. Um, One of the things, and I use stretch, I use this word in a positive way, so bear with me here. But stretch, I'm not all don't always be against it. Stretch can be good as well. So it's about finding your comfort zone. And I'm reluctant to use this even when I'm saying it to you now, but stretch is a good thing. Stretch is trying to get ourselves that little bit out of a comfort zone, but that is only possible when we've got the right balance in place, where we are getting comfortable with what we're doing and we're in the right flow. We need to just stretch ourselves that little bit just to start doing those little bit of tasks, different tasks, the things that aren't boring anymore, where we can go and learn new things. And that's how I see the word stretch. So there's four things there. And again, I'm going to start wrapping up just in the next couple of minutes so we can go into some questions and answers. So if you can utilize the Q&A button down below, or pop it into the chat if that's easier for you, whatever's easiest for you. I know Gemma will be very accommodating, and I'll help her as well. So if you can start popping those questions into the chat for now, that would be great. But I just wanted to just leave you with a question and just maybe a phrase really than anything, because when we are growing a business, when we are establishing businesses as a disabled entrepreneur, we often have to design the businesses around our health because that is ultimately the focus of why we started the business. So the self framework helps you do that more strategically, but it shouldn't compromise your health whatsoever. But it should be using you as an advantage. So that is looking at boundaries, looking at your well-being, like I've said, thinking about that intention, um, and growth as any extras. So I'm just pulling this out very quickly. And I'm going to give you this task here today, very quickly, to go away and do. Um, in fact, tell you what I'll do is I'll talk you through this very quickly. And then I'll let you go and do this in your own time using the slides and the notes as a help. So if you are struggling to manage your energy, I'm going to give you this task to go away and do. So there's four things that you can do. But first, what I'll get you to do is draw a circle. What we then do with the circle is we divide it, we divide our energy. So you might turn it into five different sections. That could be work, family, self-care, hobbies, social connections, and we'll divide that circle into different segments of where we spend our energy, the areas that take up our energy, whether we want them to or not, certainly where we want to spend our time and energy. And again, I'll put this on a note so you can see it. And I'll perhaps tell you what I'll do is I'll include it on the email when I send it out so you have this exercise to go away and do. But what I'd like to then do with that circle is just to evaluate where you are spending all of your time, your energy, and those areas. And then reimagine that circle and just think about where do we spend our time and where we really should we be spending our time and energy? And where do we need to make that first step? And it might be that we are ignoring self-care. It might be that we're ignoring the social connection side of what we are doing, and work is taking up far too much time. And then, of course, we need to then review and then we need to adjust. And absolutely, I want you to remember the goal isn't perfection. It's just progression towards that more balanced, more intentional life that we know we should have. I've just seen one that's come up there. I'm on LinkedIn, but don't use it much right now. And should you have to be on LinkedIn? I'm just going to pop this on here and then I'll get the lovely Gemma back onto the screen. Um, if I could just get you to grab this, maybe if you've got a mobile device near you, if you want to scan this QR code in, it'll be really helpful to me. Hello. I take development very, very seriously, so I'd really, really value your feedback. If I can get you to scan this QR code with your mobile phone, if you're able, what I'll also do is I'll include it on, or Gemma may, if it's okay with you, include it on the email list link as well. And ultimately, if you scan it on there, there's a couple of questions that I'll ask you, and at the end of it, it will just give you I think a link to a little drive area where you can download what they call a bonus, but it'll let you download this, some of the slides and the PDF. If not, don't worry. It will also give me your email address, and I will send an email through to you either today or tomorrow. So please bear with me. I've got a really crazy day ahead of me coming back, and I will send an email through with all the notes and that last exercise on there as well. Hello, Gemma. How are you doing? Was that helpful?
No, just trying to
You
find the
find your
bit.
microphone.
It's like I've not done this before. Thank you so much, Gary. I know, I think everyone in the chat would agree that it's been a very productive and useful session. Lots of interesting comments in the chat. Megan, some bits you might not have seen, Gary, but I know Megan commented
Mm,
about how provocative she found the word selfish, but in a good way, and that it was actually nice to be challenged on maybe what our preconceptions of words are, or how we've always kind of thought of certain words. So that was, it did definitely start a conversation for sure.
mm.
Oh, there, look, it's been ace, Gary. You are super inspiring. Thank you. You're making me
Thank
cry,
you.
Megan.
And,
Um,
apologies to everyone. There's a lot to go through. And I think that's the biggest challenge here, that just sitting on a call for, and forgive me for, 45 minutes, an hour, to sit here and go, right, I'm going to sort my life out. I'm going to get better at managing my well-being. If the one thing you do today is go away and go, I am going to look after myself more because it's great chasing these goals of growth and working with everybody else and trying to give everything to everybody else, that isn't sustainable. It really, really isn't. So, if there's one thing you can go away and do is look after yourself, great. But yeah, it's an apology because there's so much to get through, really. But if we do one thing, then that's positive, I guess.
100%. There is one question in the Q&A, Gary, so I don't know if you've got any
Mm.
thoughts. So Emily said she's got a conundrum regarding having a VA. So if she had a VA,
Mm.
I could find more capacity to magnetize more clients, but I need income from clients to be able to pay a VA. Any tips for growing coaching clients? And share any secrets, Gary, for finding new customers?
Oh, I don't know. Drop me a note separately and I'll tell you. Yeah, I keep getting asked this question. So I'm a member of the Professional Speaking Association. So all my fellow speakers, I'm running a session with it at the conference next month on how to build a brand. And I think that is my biggest tip for you is owning a particular phrase or a brand. We see Simon Sinek we see as why and at the start with why, and he owns that word. Or we see Martin Lewis as the money saving expert. Lots of people see me as the selfish speaker. In fact, I've changed my LinkedIn now to say the selfish speaker. You can see I've gone on to like really use it. And people go, what? Why is he using that word? So it's quite good from a marketing point of view. But yeah, my biggest tip for you is if you can own a particular area when you are a coach, when you're working with clients, and actually that goes for anyone really. If you can do that and you can build up a reputation, then that will hopefully build money up to be able to go and get a VA. But I know I've sworn a lot by using access to work. It's a real bugbearer, and I don't even think the Lilac review has got the magic wand configured enough to be able to go and make that change. But I know it's an area that everyone will keep talking about, and it's I do a lot of advocacy work around mental health. But if you can keep asking that question with access to work, and please don't give up, there are ways of accessing support workers there as well.
Thanks, Gary. And yeah, again, lots of comments in the chat. I know we've not got much time left, but just to say that Sarah from Lloyds has shared a link in the chat. Lloyds have got a
Mm.
really great hub on their website, specifically designed for disabled entrepreneurs. Lots of information on there, lots of resources. The link's in the chat, but I will share that as well in the email that we send out tomorrow with this recording. Um, Thank you so much for today, Gary, and thank you, Anne-Marie, as well. Excellent work, team. Thank you for everyone that joined us this morning. Really lovely to see people interacting in the chat and the Q&A. And again, I think we could probably chat for hours on all different parts of the session. A lot of people asking where they can kind of network and stuff. So I did share a link. We've got a LinkedIn networking group for disabled and neurodivergent entrepreneurs. Everyone's more than welcome to join. And there'll be more events coming soon. We did have an online networking session a couple of weeks ago. I'm sure there'll be more. If you can join us, like I say, at the Science Museum, it would be great to see you. Gary, you're going to be there, right?
I am there. I've got my ticket booked. I
Spotted a
am going to
mile off in his
travel.
yellow t-shirt.
I'm not going to be staying over that day. Do you know, I feel like I need a yellow jumper, but yeah, the
Yeah.
Science Museum is going to be quite cool actually. I couldn't come on you did a networking yesterday, didn't you? I was so upset that I wasn't able to get there for
No,
it because
you're
it's
next
only
door.
down the road. So um yeah,
Great
Gemma,
memories of
am
you
I
blindfoldly decorating a cake while we were there yesterday.
I love it's a great venue actually as well. So I would shout about the events. I've met some really amazing people when I've been to the events at the House of Lords. If you can go to one, it's very, very fancy.
It's
Um, l Lots of nice canapes. But some amazing people when you're there and just hearing other people that might be sharing the same frustrations as you. And I think I know somebody said earlier about that challenge with networking. And one of the areas that I know Gemma is very conscious of is finding that space for people that perhaps struggle with a little bit of that networking and just finding that opportunity to go away. And I think maybe that's something we could do more is maybe just find those quieter rooms and
yeah,
um,
yeah,
because
definitely.
because
It's
they are
it's
quite busy into points, aren't they, as
no,
well?
100%, but yeah, obviously anything like this, but it's online just takes that pressure away a little bit. In-person events can be quite overwhelming, but we're always here for any chats ahead of it, anything we can put in place. But lots of information to come. The Lloyds Bank link I will put into the email, the recording, along with Gary's information as well. Gary is very active on LinkedIn. If anyone wants to connect with him, I'm sure he's happy to carry on some conversations there. And he's also in the networking group on LinkedIn.
Mm.
Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate you spending your time with us this morning, and hopefully we'll see you all very soon. So thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye bye.